The first time I realized the homeowners association wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous, was when an $80,000 excavator rolled down my driveway like it owned the place. Dust everywhere, metal tracks chewing my gravel, and behind it, 2 pickup trucks full of lumber like they were about to build a resort on my shoreline. Then Diane Kessler, the HOA president, stepped out of her Mercedes and screamed, "It's community property," while a deputy quietly unfolded a court order in his hands. I'm Jack Harper, 62, retired, the kind of guy who keeps his tools clean and his boundaries cleaner. I bought my place on Hawthorne Lake back in '98, 2.5 acres private shoreline, my own access road that I paid for, graded and maintained for decades. Not shared, not sort of, not it used to be. Mine, on paper in the county records and on the tax bill I've been paying every year without missing a beat. Up the hill is Pinecrest Ridge, rows of tidy houses, manicured lawns, and an HOA that treats the world like a spreadsheet. They love rules when it comes to other people, and they love exceptions when it comes to themselves. The lake sits below them like a postcard, and for years the most they could do was stare at it from their decks and pretend that counted as lake living. Diane showed up one evening with a bright smile and a foil pan in her hands, chicken casserole like we were old friends. "We're so glad you're part of the neighborhood now," she said, even though I'd been here longer than most of Pinecrest Ridge had existed. Then she leaned in like she was sharing a sweet little secret. "The community has always had access down here. The previous owner was very generous. I didn't slam the door, I didn't yell, I just listened. And then I made the mistake of trying to be reasonable. I told her, 'Look, I'm not trying to be a villain. If a couple families want to bring a kid down to skip a rock once in a while, daylight hours, no parties, no trash, no fires, I can live with that.'" Diane nodded hard like she was taking notes for a contract she never intended to honor. At first it was quiet, a couple teenagers, a few kayaks. People smiled, waved, stayed polite. Then the weekends got louder, coolers, portable speakers. Someone left a broken bottle in the sand and I found it with my boot, 1 inch away from my dog's paw. I posted a simple sign at the path, "Private property. Please respect ours." No glass. The next morning it was gone. Not knocked over, not blown away, gone. I drove up to the HOA office because I don't do petty wars through gossip. The door had a new poster in the lobby, big glossy like a real estate brochure. Community Beach Amenity Project. A 2-level dock, a covered platform, solar lighting, a kayak rack, and a budget line that made my eyebrows jump. $85,000. I stood there staring at it, feeling that slow heat rise in my chest. Because the drawing wasn't on community property. The drawing was on my shoreline, my parcel line, my exact tree line, the one I know because I used to work as a land surveyor. You don't spend 30 years looking at markers, pins, and plat maps and then suddenly forget what land is yours. I called Diane from the parking lot. "Tell me that poster is a mistake," I said. She didn't even pretend to be confused. "It's not a mistake," she replied, like we were discussing paint colors. "We're finally improving the lake access for everyone." "For everyone. On my land," I said. She laughed, actually laughed. "Jack, don't be selfish. The lake is community property." I said, "Diane, if you believe that, then you can produce the easement." The recorded easement. The one filed with the county. Silence for half a second. Then she snapped, "We don't need your permission." That's the moment I stopped treating it like a misunderstanding and started treating it like what it was, an organized attempt to take something because they wanted it. I went home, pulled my deed, pulled the old survey, and pulled every HOA document I'd ever been mailed. No easement, no recorded access, no language that gave them a foot of my shoreline. Nothing but vibes and Diane's confidence. I called an attorney, Marisol Vega, a woman who speaks in calm sentences that land like nails. She told me, "Stop arguing. Start documenting. They can shout all day, paper doesn't shout, it just wins." So I documented. Trail cameras on the path. One on the driveway. One hidden near the shore with a clean view of the tree line. I repainted my boundary stakes bright orange. I mailed the HOA board a certified letter with the survey attached and a clean sentence: I do not consent to construction or public access beyond limited daylight permission, and any attempt to build on my property will be treated as trespass. Diane fired back an email that wasn't even subtle. Construction begins January 15th. Contractors have been instructed. This will proceed. In other words, she thought she could schedule a theft like it was a pool cleaning. The week before January 15th, the pressure ramped up. My phone filled with voicemails from strangers telling me I was ruining property values. Someone dumped a bag of trash at the end of my driveway. Another morning, I walked out and found my mailbox hanging sideways like it had been punched. That's when the helplessness hit, not the dramatic kind, the real kind. The kind where you stand in your kitchen holding your coffee, staring out the window at your own gate, and you realize you might have to defend your home from people who think a committee vote makes them kings. I didn't sit there wondering if I was the bad guy. I was past that. I sat there thinking, how far are they willing to go, and how much of my peace are they willing to burn just to win a bragging rights project? For one night, I seriously considered packing up and leaving, selling, walking away. Not because I was wrong, because I was tired. Then Marisol called me back and said, "We have the temporary restraining order. If they step on your land to build, they're in contempt." I slept maybe 3 hours, but when the sun came up, I didn't feel doubt. I felt focus. January 15th, 7:12 a.m. I heard the first engine before I saw it. The excavator came around the bend like a slow-moving tank followed by a flatbed stacked with pilings. The contractor's supervisor, a guy named Brent, hopped out with a clipboard and the look of someone who just wants to finish a job and go home. Brent said, "Morning, sir. We've got authorization from the HOA." I pointed to the chain across my driveway, thick steel padlock the size of a fist. "You've got authorization from someone who doesn't own this." He frowned. "They told us it's community access." I pulled a folder from under my arm and handed him 3 things: survey deed and the court order. Brent's eyes moved left to right, and I watched his face change from irritation to discomfort. That's a TRO, he muttered. Before he could decide what to do, Diane arrived like a storm. She stepped out in heels like she was walking onto a stage, not a construction site. "Jack," she yelled loud enough for the whole line of trucks to hear. "Move the chain." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I said, "No easement, no permission." And now, a court order. She turned to Brent and barked, "Cut it. Start the job." And that's when the twist she didn't plan for arrived with a badge. Deputy Cole Ramirez rolled up slow lights off calm like he'd seen every version of entitlement a county road could produce. He got out, walked over, and asked me for the paperwork. I handed him the TRO. He read it carefully, then turned to Diane. "Ma'am," he said, "this order prohibits the Homeowners Association and its agents from entering this property for construction or public access." Diane's face tightened like someone pulled a string behind her ears. "That's ridiculous. He can't block the community from the lake." Deputy Ramirez didn't flinch. He can block anyone from his property. And if you instruct someone to cut that chain, you're asking them to violate a court order. Diane snapped, "It's community property." I said one sentence, slow and flat. "Show the easement, Diane." Her mouth opened, and nothing came out. Brent stepped back like he'd just realized he was standing too close to a fire. "I'm not touching that chain," he said. "Not for anyone." Diane whirled on him, furious, and for a split second the mask slipped. No friendly casserole lady, no community leader, just a person who cannot handle the word no. She reached into her car, grabbed bolt cutters, and marched toward the chain. Deputy Ramirez's voice sharpened. "Ma'am, stop." That's when my trail cam caught it, all her hands on the cutters, her face twisted, her lips forming words I didn't need audio to understand. The deputy took one step forward and Diane froze. Not because she suddenly respected law, because she realized for the first time that she didn't have control. She threw the cutters into her trunk like a tantrum in metal form. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. I said, "It actually is." Over the next few days, the story got bigger than our little hilltop kingdom. A local reporter, Evan Hart, called me after he heard a contractor got pulled off a job by a court order. Then the county records requests started surfacing. Fast-tracked permits, board emails, sloppy assumptions. And the one fact that kept repeating like a drumbeat, there was no recorded lake access easement, none. Marisol filed for a permanent injunction. At the hearing, Diane's attorney tried to talk in circles. Historic use implied access community intent. All that soft nonsense that collapses under one hard question. The judge asked, "Where is the recorded easement?" Silence again. But this time it sounded expensive. The judge granted the injunction. No construction, no public access, no more threats dressed up as community improvement. And then, like a final slap, he ordered the HOA to cover my legal fees. I didn't need a victory lap. I didn't need applause. I just needed the paper to land. And it did. A week later, Diane resigned from the board. No speech, no graceful exit. Just a quiet update in the HOA newsletter, like she was a weather report that moved on. And when I walked down to my shoreline that evening, the water was still. The gate was still locked. And the only thing community about that lake was the way rumors die when the truth shows up in court. Lesson: power trips don't beat property lines, paperwork does.